down to the river. Then I took a look around. There were old men's shoes. Yeah, there were needles on the ground. No more mysteries, baby. No more secrets, no more clues. Yeah, the stars are out there. You can almost see the moon. Well, the streets are windy and the subway's closing down. Gonna carry this dream to the other side of town. Walk that line, torn apart, and don't not trying. Ride that train, and bring your home. It's midnight on Hollywood.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And there was a tune called Midnight in Harlem, performed by a band that continues to grow. Their tentacles are getting out all over the country and pretty soon probably internationally. And it's really an honor to be joined by one of the main cogs, lead guitar player and vocalist, Graham Lesh. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, how's it going?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. Glad to be back.
Absolutely. Something struck me. I wanted to ask you about just yourself personally. How do you feel a sense of urgency as it relates to the, like, are you at peace with Midnight North, or do you want it to grow faster than it is possibly able to in nature? What kind of, how would you describe your urgency as it relates to the band?
Oh, I think I'm pretty happy with how it's growing. I mean, when we first started the band, we didn't really have any expectations beyond just performing and making music and getting it out there. And I don't think that's really changed. I mean, now there are places we want to go back to, and, you know, the music that we make is, at a higher level. So there's pressure on us that way. But the whole thing started as something that, you know, it wasn't full time. It was what we gave most of our time to, but it, you know, with all of this community that we have in the Bay Area of musicians, there's always other music happening. So, you know, we're trying to not fit it in, but, you know, everyone's just here to make music and have a good time. And if we go a couple months without playing a show or growing, in terms of the crowds we're drawing or something like that, then we're all fine with that. It's luckily not really happened. We're, we've been lucky. It's, it's seeming to catch on a little bit. So,
so in my head, I had this dream, but maybe it was real. Like, you talked about the original conception of Midnight North. It was you, Elliot, and there was one more cat. There were just three of you at the beginning, right? I mean, can you talk about that?
There was four of us. It was me and Elliot and Connor, who's still our bass player, and then Eric Starr, who was our original drummer. But yeah, three of us who are still in the band.
No, I mean, can you talk about, like, it seemed to me like that was, you kind of looked around and it was the three of you. Wherever you were coming from before that is almost irrelevant, but can you talk about that at that point, the loyalty that ensued, and how you guys, because I mean, trust on the bandstand is how vocabulary grows on the bandstand. But at that time, can you talk about that feeling of just looking around? Where were you at in that point in your career, and how have you guys become stronger because of that loyalty?
Well, I can't speak for the other two, but for me, it was definitely, sort of the first band that was really playing a lot of live shows on the bandstand, like you say. The other bands I'd played with, we'd play live as much as possible, but for Midnight North, or before we came up with the name Midnight North for Graham Lesh and Friends, it was really, started at the same time that Terrapin Crossroads was. So we had this opportunity to play a lot more often than definitely that I had before. And so I think we're all sort of learning and growing as players together, and that's how the trust comes in. I don't think anyone was like ahead or behind the others in terms of musical ability, or
here's what I'm trying to say. Like it was you, Connor, and Elliot, and you said you had your original drummer. Like some cats have gone on other trips, but the core has stayed together, and I'm wondering about that feeling, like the fact that the solidarity that you feel for staying together, because people come, people go, it happens in all bands. But the three, go ahead.
It's true. I mean, I guess I was just sort of talking about sort of how we felt at the beginning, and it was this sort of trust, and we're embarking on this thing that, none of us really knew where it was going. And then we sort of wake up almost 6 years later now, and we've done what we've accomplished,
Wow.
And that's sort of, I don't know. It's not really something I've thought about. It's more just like, wow, we've made it here. There's a lot more that we'd like to do, obviously, but it's sort of more of a wow, time flies kind of a thing, more than anything.
Well, and then and then if you're able to, I mean, sometimes it's just obviously just the idea of playing and having a great night, and then that's the music speaks for itself. But then, do you feel like maybe that's what I was talking about with the urgency, where it's like, even in this time, are you able to stop and smell the roses? Or is it just left to the bandstand for that sort of, that good state of mind? Or have you been able to really sort of enjoy and step back from it? Or is it not the right time to do that?
I don't think we'd have kept going if it wasn't, a great time, if we weren't able to stop and like you said, smell the roses. But, I don't know. I mean, touring and playing as much as it's hard, but we wouldn't keep doing it if we didn't love it. And if we didn't really enjoy playing music together, for Midnight North, it really is just, I mean, we're going to keep doing this, as long as we can. We've built something that's cool, and I'm not really worried about it ending, because we'll just play, when we can, and we've built sort of the foundation of something that we can keep doing for a while.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's cool, because I was like, in transcribing the back half of our first interview, you were like, if I lost my voice, I'd still play my axe. If I had my hands chopped off, I'd still sing. So there's a deep fever inside of you that is going to continue to push forward. It's just, in my mind, I look at what's cool about your group, setting the music aside completely, is that you guys want to stay I think you guys genuinely enjoy being together. So it's like important, because there's a lot of transient nature of bands these days. It's hard to keep bands together. And so it's a lot about modulating the egos. And it seems to me like maybe you guys have borrowed a page out of the Grateful Dead book, where, you sort of police yourselves. There really isn't a de facto leader, and everybody kind of has their bliss.
It's true, but also, I mean, I'm not sure that it's taking so much out of any specific band's playbook or anything. It's more just we're we're friends. We've gone through a lot of it together, and we enjoy not just making music but spending time together. And so we want to keep doing that, So that really helps, and it also helps that it's not the only thing that any of us have done for the last 5-6 years,
Exactly. Yeah.
With Terrapin and with our scene, everyone has their other bands. I mean, Elliot's literally left for Europe the other day, and is you talked about internationally right at the top, but like she's going out with her other musical duo with Peck and Pen, and she's touring Europe for this month, and I just got back from Terrapin Family Band tours, and things like that are constantly keeping Midnight North fresh and something that we want to come back to for all of us, I think. So it's a balance that we sort of stumble into, but I think we've all found a pretty nice balance of how much we can keep each project and how much time, how much of a percentage of our lives we can give everything, what that balance is.
Talking to Graham Lesh here on the Jake Feinberg Show. I want to play you this audio clip from this cat, a guitar player, old school cat. I want you to just, listen to it, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Yep.
His time feel was different from what I ever heard before. Not ever heard, but it was somewhat baffling. His phrasing was left-handed for me. Instead of putting the beat on one, he would always put it on 1.5 or 4.5 or something. His time feel was very unusual to me. I'm not judging it and saying it's bad or good.
No.
I'm just saying it was different, and I was fascinated with it in a way. Who else plays like that a little bit what's his face? The guy that plays with John. Used to play with him quite a lot.
Was it DiMeola or
Al DiMeola? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he also has that same off time feel. It's for me it is. You have to understand, everything I say is how I feel about it. Doesn't mean it's a fact.
That's why I had no, but I want you to be clear. You guys are so modest. I don't invite you on so that you can make proclamations that are officially 100% correct. I just want your okay?
Yeah, that's my take on it. And and I've transcribed some McLaughlin and some Al DiMeola just to know what it was. Mind you, it was never been my favorite kind of playing because, like I said, it was too jagged for me. It didn't swing hard enough. Although I must say his time was impeccable. Especially both of those guys have time that's absurdly great. However, like I say, the beat falls in the weirdest places. So,
all right. The first guy he was talking about was McLaughlin, and then DiMeola.
Yep.
And what I wanted to ask you, Graham, is that you just talked about it. You have one thing that keeps Midnight North fresh is just all these other projects, bands, and you obviously love to play. You've grown a lot, but can you talk about cats like that you collaborate with in any band that where the beat falls in the weirdest places? That was Jack Wilkins, who's like one of the most. Mm-hmm. He's a serious jazzer, and he's more of a straight ahead guy, and he's a peer of McLaughlin and DiMeola's, and yet, I put that post up online and people freaked out, but he was really just talking about the fact it's too jagged for him, and I just wanted to know if there was a story or or a guy you could point to that either in your practicing, learning your instrument, or just someone on the bandstand who has impeccable time, but the beat falls in the strangest places.
I mean, the easy answer to that is all of the Dead guys. I mean, that's sort of their.
All right, well, let's go through it. I didn't expect you to say that, but go ahead.
I mean, you talk about rhythm. I mean, the two guys from the Dead that I've actually played with, are my dad, Phil, and Bob, and that's, my dad's the bass player, and you expect a bass player to, hold down the rhythm, and that's not, he he does that, but he's playing almost a lead melodic instrument, and I guess you could describe it as jagged sometimes. And I think it's the same with Bob. I mean, they both have, just ridiculous, impeccable time. And, they'll, even if you're in time, if it's too fast or too slow for them, they'll tell you immediately. Bob will stop songs live on the bandstand, like a few seconds in if the time's not right, and just, no, we got to get it right. Because he's got this innate sense of like, this is how it should be.
Wow.
Wow. But I don't know. I mean, it's not normal. Like my dad, he'll talk to me and Ross and Alex Koford on the drums, and sometimes he just doesn't like backbeats on songs, and that just means that the downbeat can be anywhere. Even if the song's in 4/4, technically, the downbeat can be anywhere. The emphasis can be anywhere, and it's a different kind of playing. And I mean, I love doing it. It's fun, and when it gels together and everyone's on the same page, it can be really special. But it's definitely not a straight ahead sort of a thing. I feel like the clip you played, that's a pretty good description of what the Dead does differently than other bands too. And it's, it's funny. It's about jazz guys and McLaughlin and Demiola, but now Jason Crosby's playing with McLaughlin in his tour.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty good. That's great.
Yeah, he's playing fiddle, and he's talking about some of the same stuff. I think it's a tour with Jimmy Herring's band that Jason's in, and also with McLaughlin's band. Sort of Jimmy's opening, and Jason's in both bands, and he says it's a very different thing. So I'm sure he's experiencing the same sort of changes in how things are felt, and how how time is in music is how the rhythms felt, how the timing is as a group is expressed.
So much is going through my head, but I mean, did it take you to actually play with your dad live to understand his unique time feel? Or did you, because when I listen to shows, Grateful Dead shows, I hear your dad playing, like he'll lock the groove, but then he just sort of wants to just, chomp away at, and do some sort of like, get his own personality in there. So he's sort of weaving in and out. He's never just locking it in. But were you able to pick up on that from listening, or was that something you just learned on the bandstand? Also, the other question is, I mean, all the stuff in the history about your dad is that he was like, you called him a musical nerd, which I love. I mean, he just loved all music, but he was a jazzer. My feeling is he loved jazz. And I'm just wondering about the bass players that he might have been impacted by who were using the upright in a trio setting in a conversational manner when it was a leading voice, guys like Scotty LaFaro or Gary Peacock, or if he ever talked to you or ever references those jazz, the guys that had influence on his playing in the Dead.
Well, I know that he loves jazz. I don't know the specific players, especially any ones that influenced him. I know he was also, he talks about all the time, at least I've read in interviews and whatnot, and in his book and whatever,
right,
where I think he talks about a lot of this. But, he was into, Baroque voice leading, and, classical music is, sort of what he grew up well, I mean, not classical, but he was
composing like sheets and sheets of music. I mean, but he was like,
of course.
And I also mean, like Ornette Coleman, he was totally in that. I mean, to me, it's
absolutely.
you know, I don't expect you to know the names, but I guess going back to the original question, I mean, you were class. You know, going back, I also transcribed. I haven't put it up yet, but it's like, you know, you did your classical piano training. You were at Stanford. Your parents never had any expectations for you, but did you really grasp your dad's time feel only when you were on the bandstand with him?
Probably. I knew there was something different about how he played because I'd listened to other rock music, especially, and it's very different. And you know, the bass is very different. But it's not just him. You know, it's all the players that he played with. I mean, everyone in the Grateful Dead. Like I was saying, Bob has his crazy way of playing rhythm guitar too. That's extremely influential. But you know, no one can play it quite like Bob does. You know, he's the rhythm guitar player of rhythm guitar players, you know?
Oh, it's insane.
And, you know,
it's insane.
Kreutzmann, especially back in the day, like, could follow and keep a groove with my dad doing all of his crazy bass stuff. You know, they'd lock in and my dad would be playing lead bass, basically, or counter melodies on the bass, and it would still groove because no one could swing like Kreutzmann. And, you know, even in the Q and some of the Phil and Friends bands, like guys like John Molo, like the same way. They like John can groove and also play off of all the crazy stuff that my dad does on bass, you know, at the same time. And that's something that Alex is learning too, you know.
Well, I was going to ask you about
really
Alex. Like, how is Alex? What does he talk about? And what are the biggest challenges? I'm confounded when I watch solo Billy Kreutzmann trying to keep it together when your dad is having his say and Jerry's doing his thing, and as a younger drummer, what does Alex talk about in terms of what are the biggest things that he has to? Is it just very deep listening, or what else is it? I mean, you know,
that's the main thing.
Yeah,
is listening. Yeah, you just have to be. I mean, everyone. It's not a complete free for all. There's, you know, we talk about things before. We rehearse a bunch, and you know, for Alex, especially as the single drummer, which is something I'm sure Russo had to deal with, Molo had to deal with. It's, you know, it gives you a lot more freedom, but it's also harder. And, you know, he's learning and he's soaking it all up, all the stuff that he, you know, my dad's talking about, you know, and this, you know, Lady with the Fan and Terrapin Station, like maybe let's drop the backbeat here and let's, you know, make it a little more free flowing. And, you know, even when there's the riffs, you know, like maybe we don't have to emphasize them all as much, the rhythm exactly the same every time, you know, things like that. But it's song to song. And, you know, Alex is learning like the rest of us. Alex is amazing, but he comes from very much the more Levon Helm, you know, backbeat, minimalist,
right,
kind of a vibe.
Well, that is exactly.
And it's cool to see that applied to the Dead stuff sometimes. Who could be plenty minimalist in, you know, for certain songs, especially in their tempos. You know, they'd be nice and slow and groovy and still get people moving. That's, you know, it's amazing stuff. But yeah, it's a different thing when we're playing. You know, we're getting out there in a jam or something, and the drums, you know, they have to follow. Sometimes instead of being the lead or the foundation. And that's something that Alex, I know, is, you know, constantly working on, and we all have to work on listening big and just sort of seeing where everything takes us.
What's interesting, I have another clip coming up later of a drummer, jazz drummer, and he played with your dad, and he was talking about Joe Henderson, the sax player, and a lot of time, again, Joe was a horn player, but he would tell this drummer, he'd say, "Don't listen to me so much, because it'll throw you off." Does your dad ever say that, where it's like, because, you know, does he ever say, "Don't listen to me so much, just feel the music," or is it really about following along?
It's more. It's not following along. It's that. You know, I think for all of us, but especially the drums, it's listen to everyone, not just any one instrument.
Exactly.
So,
That's what I meant to say. Thank you for that's good.
yeah. So I mean, definitely Alex shouldn't be like just listening to me, like I feel like I have a pretty good time, but I'm playing lead sometimes, like it's hard to follow that. And sometimes I'm following, and same with Ross, same with Jason. And obviously the bass and the drums should be locked in, but he doesn't have to be following every single thing that my dad does, because sometimes playing off of each other is what's, the bass and the drums not locking in, but being counter to each other is what's the interesting thing. So it always sort of changes. It's moment to moment. And yeah, it's something that happens when you play enough and you rehearse enough and you become a band. And, we talked about Midnight North doing the same thing. Now we trust each other, but we're building the Terrapin Family Band into something that does the same thing.
I'd be remiss. This is fascinating because, could you talk about a moment when, your dad is on record as saying, like, between your brother, yourself, and your dad, this unique vocal blend. It dawned on him at one of these sort of, you guys were singing together and you had this sort of interesting vocal blend. But I wanted to ask you about what that vocal blend is in your mind. Because Phil was often, he would, your dad would sing, but he took many years off in the Dead and didn't necessarily, him and Brent had some great duo harmonies together on songs, but I'm wondering about Brian, Graham, and Phil. How did that come about, and what is that blend that he's referring to?
He's referring to the family blend, which is always going to be greater than the sum of its parts. Sometimes you find people outside of your family who you can sing with as easily, but I think it's more rare. And I don't know, there's all kinds of sibling singers who or family singers who just sound there's just something about it that that's sort of more, I don't know how to put it other than that it's greater than the sum of its parts. And I think with my dad and my brother, it definitely is like that. But, luckily, I found other people who I just blend really well with. Obviously, in Midnight North with Elliot, especially with Elliot and Alex Koford, when we get to do that occasionally, that's a pretty crazy blend for me. That's always fun. My brother doesn't sing and perform so much anymore, but the family stuff extends. Like Elliot's one of my best friends, and Alex Koford is basically my cousin. I grew up with him.
The dude is a badass. He's a total badass, man. Yeah,
he's an
unbelievable
singer, and he, his just singing with him, I feel like we can follow and we can. I don't know. It takes a shorter amount of time to like work up a new harmony with him. It takes less time to sort of sink into the nuances of it. And it's the same way with my dad. I don't know. You just find these people who your voices sound better with, and luckily I found a bunch. Even more luckily, a lot of them are in my family.
Well, this is the thing. Did your mom sing a little bit? Even just not professionally.
Oh, no.
Because your voice, you have your own. You really have your own voice. No, I'm just saying you don't sound like your dad. You don't sound like his voice. You have a very, very different.
Yeah, and my brother doesn't sound like me really either. We can sound like each other, all of us, I think.
Wow.
But it is different. And sort of, I don't know, just we combine, and the similarities and the differences sort of blend together into something that's really cool when you're related, because there is, you say we sound different, but I know there are some similarities in tone too, and it might just be timbre or something like that, but they just combine well.
Can you talk a little bit about in your own, like, is it where you want to grow the most as we enter into 2018 in terms of your, like, is it on-stage demeanor? Is it as an entertainer? Are you working on what are the things that you are still, that you still have? I mean, everybody's learning. Any musician that I talk to, they'll talk about they're still looking for those notes when in their 80s and 90s. So I mean, I'm just saying, but in this time where Graham Lesh is right now, what are a couple of or what are some intangible things that you still feel like you have a lot of room to grow, and you look forward to trying to push yourself out of your comfort zone?
That's a good question.
You can say nothing. You can say nothing.
No, I mean, nothing is very much the wrong answer.
Yeah.
And I know that's not what I think either. But I'm sort of trying to find something each show and each recording session and see if I, just push myself. I don't want to be practicing on the bandstand, but I also want to be pushing myself beyond my comfort zone a little bit. So, and it a lot of it is just physically, I don't know if I can play this thing fast enough in this little amount of time,
right.
Or making my mind move fast enough where I can follow chord changes for something that maybe I don't know as well and play lead stuff over that. Or it could, sometimes it's even just like trying to play better rhythm guitar or locking in with a different drummer or something like that. So it's always kind of little things. I mean, the main thing I've been doing recently is trying to work on my tone without relying on different gear or pedals. I have my instruments that I really enjoy. I've got a couple guitars and I got a really small pedal board, but if I want to sound more Grateful Dead-y, I do, I want to figure out what I can do with my fingers to do that, or, with my, with just pressure and how I, maybe I play finger style for this riff or something like that. And that's sort of what I've been trying to work on without having to really, rely on a giant pedal board or something, just being able to play a lot of different styles. Just straight into an amp, because both of the bands I'm in, and then obviously the Terrapin community, we're playing all kinds of music all the time, and I'm not switching up guitars every time. I'm not switching out pedal boards and amps every time I have to play a different style.
I love it.
So
I love it. You're not relying on you're not relying on gimmicks. Not gimmicks is the wrong word, but you're trying to channel your. You said you want to work on your tone without any electronic enhancements, just what's coming out of you.
Yeah, I want to work on my tone, just straight guitar, fingers, feel. I want to, that sort of thing. Also, I'm really, really terrible at playing slide guitar, but it's really fun, so I've been trying to mess around with that as well.
That's great, man. That's great. I mean, is there, but that's, and so the slide part of it, now that you feel like you can work some of that out live, or do you just prefer to do that not in front of
I'm starting to get there.
Yeah.
At Terrapin, I'll do that. Just, easy little lead stuff. But I'm not trying to play, Dwayne Allman licks or anything.
No.
Not for a while.
No. I want to read you this quote because it resonated with me. It's got from a really good guitar player named Dean Brown. He said that the thing I'm trying to do as a soloist is, rather than being the only focus, I'm trying to make sure I'm still connected in a very strong way to what those guys are doing. Those guys meaning the rhythm section. When everyone's on the same page emotionally and rhythmically, it's so much more powerful than if you're just backing somebody up and waiting for your solo. Sometimes when I'm playing a solo, I can't wait for it to be over. I know that's antithetical to what you're supposed to want to do. The guitar is this massive phallic sounding instrument. It's got all the volume and sustain. It's just very formidable. And when you play it and you start soloing, then everybody wants some of that. So everybody quits playing the groove and starts worrying more about that. I feel that, and I'm thinking, Jesus, as soon as my solo's over, I'll be playing rhythm again. Things will go back to collectively expressing an idea to the audience, as opposed to this loss of focus that's going on right now, simply because everybody's trying to get a piece of that energy. Have you been in bands like that before? And why? One thing I think that stands out about Midnight North is because there's collective expression. And I ask you, as a younger musician, why do you think we don't see? I think one reason Midnight North stands out uniquely is because of that. And I wonder why other bands struggle with that. And I'm just curious about your opinion because I see it all the time. Someone's like, they take off with their solo and you lose that collective groove.
I don't know why. I imagine it's because most, the reason we don't see a lot of that is just because, it might just be there's not a lot of bands. There's a front person,
right?
There's a backing band,
right? That's
and so
exactly.
The solo is the focus, and that's very antithetical to the whole Grateful Dead vibe. Jerry was the lead player most of the time, but they were all part of that.
Exactly.
Anything he played, everyone in the band was part of it, and maybe that's what Dean Brown doesn't like. That everyone loses the groove and starts trying to like he said, get a part of that energy. But I think that's cool sometimes because it makes it less of a solo and more of a group, improv situation. And I do think that it's a little different for jazz musicians or fusion even than it is with rock and roll or country or whatever we're calling ourselves, Americana, because, the lead guitar or organ or whatever we have in Midnight North, it's like an extra melodic part, but it's not the most melodic part. The most melodic part is the voices. So that's sort of always the focus for me and for us. And if someone's taking a solo, it's really just because we felt like it had to be there. Maybe this is different from other bands, but we don't really have to solo. We can just play our songs.
I freaking love it,
and
man. Oh my God.
The songs, I feel like they stand on their own. I know the Grateful Dead songs do, but sometimes it's really cool that this vocal part builds into this big instrumental thing, and a great lead guitar solo is going to really bring the energy up. And I don't know. It also sort of relates to something that I know the Midnight North talked about a lot, but the idea of what the rest of the band should be doing when someone's soloing, which is, or what the guitar player should be doing to get the right thing out of the rest of the band. Should the guitar player be riding the wave of what the rest of the band is letting them surf on, or are they dragging the rest of the band behind them, and bringing the energy up and down with what they play? And every player is different. I think I like to sort of ride the wave more. I'm not one that's going to drag the band, into a higher energy spot with the lead part. But some players are, and some, drummers are better at following a guitar player, and some drummers or bass players or rhythm sections are better at, building up underneath the guitar player, and then the guitar player can follow that energy where it goes. It's really just every band is different. And I don't know, maybe in jazz, guys are just, and gals are just taught to you're a rhythm instrument, player, or you're a soloist, and so you're taught to either follow or lead. But
it's funny you.
It's always a sort of a. It's always a push and pull, and every player's tendencies are different, and so, yeah, being part of a band that sort of stays together and plays a lot, you learn those tendencies, and you can get the best out of everybody.
It's really interesting how you interpreted that quote, because now that I think about your interpretation, you're right. It seemed like it was, I don't know. At first, when I read that quote, it was more like him saying, "There's something," and he was also alluding to Jimi Hendrix on Voodoo Child, Electric Ladyland, where he just was playing the chick 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 at the beginning, and that was without drums. And then the drums came in. Right. So it was the ability to still play rhythm and lead at the same time. And that's what the Dead seemed to do so well. And that was the other question are you just, that's the thing that bothers me about formulaic jazz in this time, is that I was just in New York City and I got to go see Pat Martino, and he's a dear friend and I love him dearly. It was so predictable. It was, you start the song, you start with the guitar solo, then you go to the B3 solo, then you have a horn solo, then a trumpet solo, and it's just like, there's nothing could be more deflating for me. And for you guys, it's much more of the Grateful Dead aesthetic, or even just that psychedelic scene aesthetic, where it was like, well, maybe there'll be a solo and maybe there won't be, but we're going to ride the wave. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I don't remember if I talked about this last time, but we sort of wrote our last record with all this in mind. Under the Lights is the whole album. There's like 2 guitar solos on the whole thing.
How many tracks are there?
11.
And only 2 guitar solos. That is remarkable.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, there's little lead breaks, but they're melodies mostly. And we just felt like the songs were stronger. We wanted to be concise, really, musically. And, we put guitar solos and B3 solos and, all kinds of stuff in these songs live. But for the record, we thought that the best version of these songs to listen to on vinyl or on Spotify or on CD or in a car was, let's put the focus on the vocals and the melodies, and the structure of the song. And I think it worked. It came out really well. We built all these places where if we want to go into a solo here, we can, but we can also just make this the 4-minute version of, whatever song.
This is classic. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like the studio.
We made a really nice, we made a really, really good, Americana record. I thought that way. And it's not, it doesn't sound like the Dead so much. It doesn't sound like, we tried to make something like, the band would, or something like that, or Jason Isbell, like that's sort of what we were more going for, rather than, let's show off how great our lead playing is.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, what's so classic is, what's so beautiful is that we could be doing our 90th interview in like 5 years, and one of those tunes on the album are like, standard 16-minute tunes at that point. Like playing in the band on the studio album was 4 minutes long. And eventually they were like, oh, now we can just stretch out here. And that song eventually...
Totally. There's all kinds of examples of that,
Right.
But for the record, yeah, I don't know. Part of it is we wanted to press vinyl and we wanted to make it as short as possible, but we liked all these songs. So, but part of it was just, we wanted to play it live in the studio, and we wanted it to be focused on, that just wasn't what interested us.
I dig. I dig it, man.
It's something that I probably should work on, but I'm not that great at being a lead guitar player in the studio. And so I didn't want to go home and write solos. That's really boring to me. And then I'm going to be all in there all day playing a bunch of, noodly things until I find something. And it's just it just wasn't what I wanted to do. I feel very comfortable playing lead guitar in a live setting, but studio is just different. And so, yeah, I was just like, let's just play the song. The song doesn't have, the lyric, the chorus ends and we go to the bridge, that's how it should be.
You know what? And I'll tell you something. It's completely, in my mind, maybe not singular, but it's totally against the grain of anything going on in people just want to have the noodly stuff. They want to go on these beautiful, and what I like about it is, this is the follow-up question for you. You mentioned Spotify, but part of it was also, I'm guessing that, well, number one, have you gotten radio play on your tunes, and was part of the reason you wanted to make them understandable for just regular people, and not to, you wanted their ears to, how much of it was not a bottom line thing, but how much of it was this thing you wanted to be radio friendly?
I mean, it depends on the radio, right? Like we were definitely not going for, modern country radio or top 40 radio or anything like that.
Right.
So, though, like 25 years ago, maybe our songs fit on some of those formats. But, what we were trying to do, I mean, we did get a little bit of play on Americana radio, and that's awesome, and we weren't going for that, but we were trying to make a little bit of a statement that Midnight North is not just a jam band.
No way.
We can,
mm-hmm.
but it's just not who we are, and it's never who we were. I mean, we started playing like, Emmylou Harris songs and Graham Parsons songs, and the Grateful Dead songs that we like to do are like from American Beauty, stuff like that. So it was a little bit of a specific calculus, but we also know that because of who my dad is, that's sort of what the focus is going to be when it comes to our initial fans and our, the press we get and stuff like that. So we're just going to be sort of in that middle ground and just play and write what we want. And this particular album came out really nicely because of those decisions that we made. That, we produced it in a way that, we are this band, and this is what we sound like. But, when we play live, we can do these songs and stretch them a little more. So it's a nice middle ground for us.
Well, and I got to be honest. I mean, taking it out of just the band, I mean, I think it's just really healthy for younger peeps or people on Americana radio to be able to hear what you're doing. So they have something different, a little, maybe stretch their palate out a little bit, And that's not a bad thing.
Americana radio is pretty great. I mean, these days there's a lot of cool stuff happening there. It's kind of like the cooler alternative version of country radio, but it's still radio, and so it's still pretty poppy.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
yeah.
If we got a little play, that's awesome, and I'm glad we brought our vibe to it.
I got one more voice to play for you, and I'm curious if this is newfound truths for Graham Lesh. So take a listen to this and come back.
I was playing with a piano player 4 nights a week in Nevada at Shipwreck Beats. It was John Allaire and Mitchell, and we were playing duo gigs. John sang and played piano and a B3 organ at the same time. And we're playing one night, and this fella comes in with a saxophone, and he's dressed all in black, and he's got a black hat on. And nobody knows who he is, and he's standing, and the dancers are bumping into him and knocking him. He'd be playing, and they'd knock his saxophone and get him banging into his mouth. And he was just really just a unknown, but he played pretty good, And it turned out it was Van Morrison. So Van started to like playing with us, and we did some playing with him that way, like that. Just as, he came to our gigs and played Lynn County guys, John O'Leary, Terry Haggerty from the Sons of Chaplain, and Van, and Phil Lesh. And there was a revolving group of people, all kinds of different people who were in and out of that thing. And it wasn't always Van. A good bit of the Loose to Truck was just Phil and John O'Leary, myself, and Terry Haggerty. And, it was just, we played locally when the gig came up later on when Bill Graham was booking Van, when Van signed with Bill Graham. Then we started doing these things called jam sessions, and they were usually Phil on bass and the same band. But, it was just a very thrown together good time had by all. And once again, Phil Lesh is an amazing musician. He's such I used to tell him, Phil, you need a bass player because you got so much going on. You don't play the usual bass parts, and you could use to play with another. We should have a bass player and you.
All right. Too Loose to Truck. Are you familiar with that band?
I am not, no.
Okay, so this is revelatory. This is great. That was from June 3rd, 2014, with a drummer named Steve Mitchell, who is a really incredible jazz drummer. He was the one I was talking about that played with Joe Henderson before. And here it is, him and John O'Leary are playing, and Van Morrison walks in. Next thing you know, Phil's in the band, and it was basically a short-lived group, but it was, in my mind, one of the only bands that your dad was in outside of the Dead. It was called Too Loose to Truck, 1976. And there's a couple of shows out there, too, that are remarkable. But I just found it hysterical that he would say, Phil, we really need to get you a bass player because you're so
it's funny.
Yeah.
We literally just played in Mobile, Alabama. We did a benefit show the night before Thanksgiving for hurricane and fire and general,
Sure.
everything is terrible relief.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Sorry.
It's not too far off, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we did a couple tunes with, or we actually only just did one with both of them. But it was Terrapin Family Band with a whole bunch of special guests, and one of them was George Porter Jr. And that was fun with the one tune with the two of them playing bass.
Wow! Wait! George and your dad were playing double bass.
Yeah, on Iko of all songs. It's pretty amazing. They play very differently, obviously, and I'm sure it could work. But that would be a lot going on down in those low registers.
Before I let you go, I wanted you to talk about your musical relationship and your relationship with your brother Brian, and what you respect most about him as a musician.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, he's not really a musician anymore. But when he did, he was a great player, great singer. But most importantly, and he still is, a really amazing writer. So now these days he's he'll occasionally still write songs and send them to my family, and we played a couple of them in family band shows. He just wrote a new one called Lay Down Sailor that we played in Chicago the other day. And yeah, they're amazing. He's got a way with words. He writes fiction as his main gig these days. He's working on a book.
Wow. So do you?
Yeah.
But do you hope that he gets back on the bandstand?
If that's what he wants, then yeah. But I'm just pretty stoked that he's doing creative things. Right. And if he wants to write our lyrics or for the family band or write songs for us, that's pretty amazing too. I mean, we hang out and talk about like sports and stuff, and play with with my nephew, with Brian's son Levon, and
Levon Lesh
you
is
know,
his
that's-
name. Levon Lesh.
yep,
That's such a great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Levon
No, I did.
Davis.
I mean, but I respect it too. As long as he's tapping into the creative source, you're cool with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's my brother. I mean, he's a great player, but you know, he's gonna do what he wants to do, and I am super into that. And if that involves writing, then that's even cooler for me, because dang, he is a very, very good songwriter and just writer in general. But yeah, it's a lot of songs that he's gonna write that everyone's gonna want to hear. I know I will.
So 2 questions. Are you going to Hawaii with your dad for New Year's, or are you going to be
Yes,
performing?
that is the Terrapin Family Band. It's billed as Phil and Friends, but it is the Terrapin Family Band, the 5 of us with Eric Krasnow.
With Krasnow, it's going to burn. Okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
March 17th of next year.
Yes.
Okay. Pot of Gold
We're gonna
Music.
have a busy day.
Pot of Gold Music Festival in Chandler, Arizona. I would like to come up and catch a hang with you guys that day.
That would be great. I know you've talked to Elliot too. Midnight North will be there playing earlier in the day, and then Terrapin Family Band at night, and a lot of pretty ridiculous bands in between.
Yeah,
too.
Big Head Todd, the
Sturgill Simpson.
Sturgill
yeah.
Simpson. I mean, but the fact that it's really somewhat close to my backyard. I mean, and the other, I just also, for the record, your dad and I are 1 day apart on our birthday. I'm 3/14/78.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So
Nice. Birthday week for you too.
big birthday, and I'm like, okay, so if Graham if he's not in San Rafael for New Year's, you can bet Saturday the 17th. Let's just blow it out and have a ball, man.
Let's do it.
Much love to you, man, and always great. It's so good to connect with you guys, and all the best to you and your family in the holidays. And let's just stay in touch, and as we lead up to this Pot of Gold Music Festival, baby.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for having me.
All right, Graham. Peace.
Bye.
Later. Graham Lesh carving out his own path on his own journey. Off to the greater Pacific Northwest tomorrow to interview some merry pranksters.